Welcome, Jaganath.
Wait, I have to, oh, there you are.
Yeah, you have to find my little box.
How are you, Ramananda?
Very well, very well. Even better now that I'm seeing you.
That's so sweet. Things seem to be humming in San Francisco.
At this moment, we have a group of 20 people in toward the end of the meditation teacher training. And there's a different group that are participating in a 21-day meditation challenge.
Whoa, what's the challenge?
Meditate every day for 21 days together.
That's great. So it's like a virtual thing where you can.
Yeah, it's virtual. Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah. So that group's been meeting and is almost complete. So your lecture, your time with us is timely for both those groups. And you can see in one corner of your screen, a number of the residents of the Institute are also joining us.
Oh, great. That's so everybody has some familiarity with meditation then.
I believe so. I believe so.
Okay.
I'll say a few words of introduction, if I may.
Sure.
Just, I welcome everyone. Thank you all for coming. It's a great honor and pleasure to have Reverend Jaganath with us. He's one of the senior-most disciples of Sri Swami Satchidananda and is the founder and spiritual head of the Yoga Life Society and its first Yoga Life Center in Woodland Park, New Jersey. Reverend Jaganath has a long history with integral yoga as one of the primary or founding teachers of the integral yoga certification programs in Hatha Yoga and Raja Yoga. He and Swami Karunananda together developed both the Raja Yoga teacher training that we offer and the group that's taking meditation, that course. So he's been instrumental in systematizing these programs that we use to train teachers. He also helped to found the Integral Yoga Ministry way back in 1975. His book called Inside the Yoga Sutras is a scripture that we refer to often as we teach the Raja Yoga. And we've referred to your book numerous times, Inside Yoga Meditation, Awaken, Inside Yoga Meditation, during this meditation teacher training. So those are two books I highly recommend of Reverend Jaganath's. But beyond all the basics, what I love about you, Reverend Jaganath, is you're a joyful man. And I think that says as much or more than just about anything else we could say. You're a consistently joyful person that's fun to be with. So thanks for agreeing to spend some time with us.
It's my pleasure, Ramanand. And as always, you do an introduction. Now I feel like I have to live up to something I don't know if I can do. Because many of the same things you could say about you. So maybe we could start. Wait, I'm just gonna, so I'm not just seeing me. Okay, yeah. Is anybody in this group, would you consider yourself new to meditation? Yes. Kind of. Usually there's a few like, yeah, kind of new. Let's see. Let me go to the next page. Anybody new? A little bit. So what we'll do maybe is do a little bit of kind of background, and then
we have one new person here, Jaganath, that just came in, new to meditation.
Oh, okay. So we'll do like a little background, and then maybe what could be interesting early on somewhere, if you have any questions. because really in essence, the meditation technique isn't very difficult to understand. What's really hard is to do it, to make it successful. So sometimes it's better just to find out, like a diagnosis, like we're in a clinic. Like, this is the problem I'm having, or how do I get past this or that, or any advice. So let that brew a little bit in your mind. And then maybe we can circle back to that and make it as practical as possible. And maybe I can throw in a few tidbits here and there that could be useful for even more advanced. I should ask that. Does anybody consider themselves like a champ, meditation champ? Like, I've been doing it for 5 years. I've never missed a day. I'm not seeing any hands go up. So maybe not yet, but a contender. Maybe some of you are contenders, not champs yet. Hey, being a contender isn't so bad. Okay. There's lots of reasons why people meditate. Some of them are really obvious. It could be relaxing. It could lower your blood pressure. It can improve your ability to focus the mind. Some people meditate because they find that it enriches their spiritual life. Their study of scripture becomes more focused, or their understanding is allowed to deepen in a more profound way when the mind opens to new ideas. But one way to look at it, in addition to all the wonderful relaxing things that can happen, and by the way, I never forget to mention, meditation is profoundly relaxing and also could be profoundly disturbing. So, because sometimes you bounce between the two. But one of the nicest ways I think to think of it is meditation helps you discover a deeper part of yourself that you're carrying around and that's influencing you, but you don't really have a conscious connection with it. So when I first started meditating, which is sometime in the 70s, I can't say never, but I don't have any conscious memory of having the thought of, well, it's 6 o'clock in the morning, it's time to meditate. I never had that idea to meditate. I don't know where it came from, but I always said to myself, this is all to myself, well, it's time for me to be with myself. It's time for me to be with myself. And I think there was a really, for me at least, a profound experience realizing how little time I actually spend with myself. I spend time doing lots of things. I'm involved with this or that. That time I was a musician, doing band practices and doing these things and all the things you have to do to just live, grocery shopping and this and that, getting the car fixed. But I had almost no time just with me. And the feeling was like, I didn't know who I was. And I'm not talking about the answer is like, oh, I am the immortal self. I just didn't know who I was as a guy, as a human being. What was I really like? So for me, at least the beginning stages of meditation were really based on just finding a deeper me, not developing anything new. That happens as well. But for me, it was a matter of like getting to know myself. And then the thought was, if nothing else, what a waste of time to go through life and not know who I am. Again, I'm not talking spiritual level. Just who's this guy that's walking around doing these things? What's he really like? So for me, that's what meditation was like. And I would suggest that maybe think of that a little bit, that we can go through an entire lifetime and not really get in touch with who we are. Again, I'm not talking about the higher self or none of those things yet. Sometimes we jump ahead. It's not a good thing. We may not be ready for absorption in these higher ideals. Sometimes it's just good to get to know who you are, to see maybe yourself as others see you. And that also still doesn't negate the idea that it's relaxing and it's like a little mini vacation. And in these days, I think a nice word to describe meditation sessions is to unplug. These days, literally, we're plugged into everything. I'm still, maybe it's partially my age, but I'm still amazed at how many times I see people that seem to have phones grafted onto their hands. Wherever they go, there's phones. We're plugged into everything. We very rarely are unplugged and have that quiet time. That quiet time is really healing mentally, physically as well. So here, we're under the kind of the umbrella of yoga. And my experience is that even though yoga has a history of meditation that may be over 15,000 years old, most people don't associate yoga with meditation. My experience has been primarily asana pranayama, which is great. And then I've heard yoga students say, oh, I do yoga, and then I go to this Buddhist center or some other center to learn meditation, as if yogis never did it before. Don't forget, Buddha learned to meditate from Hindu yogis. So, but most people don't seem to know that. But there's four definitions there are lots of definitions of yoga. There's four that I think, especially TTs, should know, but it help all of us. The one that you really know is yoga chitta vritti nirodha, right? Yoga, there's two ways to translate it, and I'll do both. Yoga is the stilling, the restraint, and the modifications of the mind stuff. So it's this recognition that the mind is just jumping around. I would suggest, if you want to have an interesting kind of inner experience, think of your mind as an octopus with 1,000 legs. and each leg is out looking, grabbing. Patanjali in the Yoga Sutras uses the word graha, which means to grasp. So the mind is constantly reaching all at the same time, 1,000 arms all over reaching. And this first definition of yoga, yoga chitta vritti nirodha, can be understood as saying, like, let's stop all that movement and let's see what's left. And as a footnote, part of what we'll be talking about probably several times this afternoon is we want to learn how to be good to our minds. Your mind, which goes on these crazy adventures moment to moment, what it's really trying to do, the ultimate purpose, is to find out what in life will make it more fulfilling and meaningful, bring me happiness, and what are the things I should avoid. Those of you know that, the modification, the word modification as vritti, right? This whirling of the mind, the vrittis. That activity, which we kind of look at almost like an enemy, we should have a little compassion for it. Because day to day, hour to hour even, and maybe minute to minute sometimes, we're just trying to find a way to feel happy, to be more comfortable with the realities of life. And meditation is the key to that. So that's what the activity is. But at the same time, it's like an untrained puppy that can cause all kinds of havoc in the house, tearing up pillows and doing. I don't have to get into all the gory details, but you know what I'm talking. It needs discipline. It needs direction. It needs guidance. And it also needs to be loved. I don't think you could be really successful in meditation unless you really find a way to love your mind with its faults, with its mistakes and shortcomings. Maybe we'll get into that a little more later. So that's one way to understand yoga chitta vritti nirodha. Yoga means to still this activity. And it's a wonderful translation, and it's one we should live up to, but it also has some problems, so I'll get to in a moment. I'll give another way of understanding that same sutra. The key word is nirodha, which means to restrain or to end. So it could be talking about stilling the mind, but it also, just as valid, is what's ending is a case of mistaken identity. Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha is also understood as I've mistaken the body-mind as my higher self, the Atman, the self within, that pure light that's really my true nature. Yoga ends that misidentification, case of mistaken identity. I think the two definitions really should be next to each other. Does that make some sense? Something's ending. One is looking at the activity. The other thing that's ending is a fundamental misperception of who we are. Put them together, and I think we have maybe a little fuller understanding of what Patanjali might have been trying to lead us to understand. So that's one main definition of yoga that you hear all the time. And then there's three from the Bhagavad Gita. And I've chosen those because for most yoga students, if they're going to get into a sacred text, it'll be sutras and or Gita. Right? There are others. In the Upanishads, yoga is mentioned. In other places, yoga is mentioned. But I think these four, I call them the core four, are really wonderful when you take them together. And my favorite is the one I'll stay for last, because it's dramatic and I like drama. Equanimity of mind is yoga. If you want to look it up, it's in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verse 48, 248. Balanced mind, equanimity of mind is yoga. There's another one that is also fantastic. Perfection in action is yoga. Sometimes translated as skill in action is yoga. And that's also chapter 2, and it's verse 50. Again, you could look it up. And here's my favorite. Yoga is the severance from union with pain. Bhagavad Gita, this is in chapter 6, verse 23. And in the Sanskrit, it's kind of a, I don't know, like a little humorous thing that's going on. It doesn't show in English, but in Sanskrit, it would be something like, yoga is the ending of yoga with pain. Because the word samyoga is in there. Yoga is a severance from union, yoga, with pain. So I think it was meant to be, by whoever wrote it, it's kind of like a little moment of levity and irony. Like, isn't this neat? Listen to this. We don't have to get into that. It's just, I think, interesting. But I think it's the most, in some ways, the most important definition of yoga. Because it tells us why we're going to be sitting maybe for 21 days or more. Because yoga can sever our connection, our way of thinking and living that's allowing us to be plagued by pain, unhappiness, doubt, all those things we don't like to have, sorrow. The word for pain that's used in the Gita is dukkha. D-U-H-K-H-A, dukkha. Dukkha, literally, if you dive into the word, means bad axle hole. Which you wouldn't think to find. If you break it up, it's dushka. Dushka, bad axle hole. So yoga is the severance from union with the bad axle hole. So we take it literally, we go nowhere. But if we take it as a metaphor, there's something very rich here. So you have to imagine it's more than 2,000 years ago. You're in India, and it's mostly dirt roads. And for whatever reason, you have a little cart. Maybe you go to and from the village to sell your wares. And you notice that on your way to town, going through the different ruts and over stones, that it's a very unsettling feeling. It's kind of like, at least for some of us here, it would be something like having turbulence when you're flying, and you don't feel so comfortable. So some people are more experienced flyers, and they're okay. But a lot of it, by the way, they've done studies. Even the people who say like no problem, when you hook them up to instruments, their blood pressure goes up, the oxygen, carbon dioxide changes. There's a part of your mind that's saying, I'm up way in the air, and this is like shaking. This is not natural. Your body is not kind of dim. It knows like this is not unusual place for me to be. I'm supposed to be kind of on the ground. That's what I'm built for, not to fly around. But now you're in this little cart, and it feels that way. It's like shaking and rattling, and sometimes maybe a wheel falls off. And you're thinking, this is just too much. I have to find a way to make a more comfortable trip to town. So the first thing you do, most likely, is think, I have to take care of the physical body of the cart. Make sure everything is screwed in tight and everything, the parts are all fine. But still, there's all those ruts and boulders and whatever else is in the road. And you think, well, how am I going to deal with that? And this is like now an analog to yoga. I have to be a better cart driver. I don't know if that's the word you would use. A cart driver, you know what I mean, right? I have to learn how to control the cart better so I can get around all these obstacles. And what you find is, this is like a new student of yoga level. Yeah, it seems to be helping. I can maneuver around a lot of the obstacles. I might even get to be great at it. But then one day I hit a paved road somewhere near Bangalore, someplace like that. And here's the paved road. And here's the key. It's still not steady. The cart is still shaking and rattling, and I don't know what to do. I look carefully and I find out something important. I look at the wheel, and in the middle, there's a hole. But what if it's not quite in the middle? Or what if it's an elongated hole? That means no matter how skillful I am and how smooth the road is, until I have my center, we use that right for ourselves, right? My center. Until I have my center right, it's still going to feel uneasy to me. Then this way you can translate the word dukkha instead of pain. In Gita, you'll usually see pain or misery, right? The severance from union with pain or the severance from union with misery. I would say that one way to look at it is the severance from union from things that are persistent, pervasive precariousness. That's what dukkha is. Persistent, pervasive feeling of precariousness. It's that same part of you. All of us have at some point said goodbye and gone on a trip, or someone we know left on a trip, and there's that moment. I know I've heard many times when I'm leaving somewhere, people will say, oh, safe home. What's happening is there's a part of the mind that knows most likely he'll make it home, but we don't know. Things happen. That's a little nagging thing that's going on, right? Pervasive, persistent feeling of precarious. It could be like intense suffering is also dukkha, but it also could be this, I can't trust life. I can't trust it because I know things happen. We may have had that experience where someone left to go buy some cantaloupes and got in a car accident and totaled the car. It's not like you planned it. You don't think it's likely to happen, but you know it could happen. How do you get through life feeling fulfilled, having a meaningful life, peaceful life, knowing that? That's where yoga comes in. When you really get to discover that part of you which is unshakable, then you achieve samatvam, balance. Equanimity, samatvam, is a balance in Sanskrit. Right? So those 4 definitions of yoga, right? Yoga chitta vritti nirodha, the restraint of the modifications of the mind stuff, or the ending of the mistaken identity of who we are, is one. Equanimity of mind is yoga. Perfection or skill and action is yoga. And then severance from union with dukkha is yoga. There's no mention of asana or pranayama, which is not to belittle those things, but what it's saying is if we want to understand the very heartbeat of yoga, you have to look at this. Even doing asanas is not yoga unless the mind is focused on what you're doing. I remember teaching hatha classes. There's one class in particular that was really instructive to me. I'm teaching the class, and 2 students next to each other. One was a ballet dancer, professional ballet dancer, and one was a woman who was easily over 300 pounds. They're next to each other. So I was teaching the class, and to get to my conclusion first, I said, it's the 300-pound woman that's doing the asanas right. Because even though her movements were limited by her physical condition, there was a beauty in it. She was focused. And when she did cobra pose, when she lifted up, and it couldn't be very high, when she lifted up, it was smooth and focused. Meanwhile, the ballet dancer was in all kinds of, she could easily move her body in all kinds of ways, but you could tell her mind wasn't there. It wasn't a challenge for her. So if we wanted to be really kind of conservative, I would say the one who was 300 pounds was doing yoga. The other one was exercising. Good exercise. There's nothing wrong with it, but yoga requires focused mind. Even many scholars say there is no yoga without meditation, meaning the ability to focus the mind. Regardless of what it is you're doing, you want the mind to be fully present to that. So those 4 definitions give kind of a nice rounded understanding of what we mean by yoga and what's rich in yoga that we can apply to all levels of our lives. So far, so good. Any questions? By the way, you could ask questions anytime. It doesn't mean I'll answer, but you can ask questions. So,
Hariom, I also put in the chat that if anyone would like to ask a question like anonymously, you can just write it to me. I'm Sita, and there's a dash, and it says Yoga Life Society.
Thank you. Yeah, see, we have more than one page, and I don't check.
Yes, so
I'll be checking back and forth.
Yes, I'll be
So
checking.
we want to make sure all the questions are asked. So let's shift for a moment to like how you doing with your meditation. There are mounds and mounds of hints that many of them are fantastic. But one of the things we want to look at is, think of it this way. What is the fuel for regularity? What fuels regularity? Because, at least in my way of seeing it, the biggest boon we could have is being regular in practice. If we could just be regular in practice, everything starts to fall into place. The difficult thing is to be regular. Like to have a time, this is my meditation time every day, and get back to it. Maybe better than like 2 or 3 times a week. Ideally, you would want 7 days a week. Most of us eat 7 days a week, but we're not feeding ourselves spiritually as often, and we could probably use a little help there. So what's going to fuel regularity? What makes you want to do something? You want inspiration. So I think part of every yogi's toolbox should be, what inspires me? What is it that when I hear it, or I read it, or someone tells me about it, that makes me think, yes, I want to do this? What does that to me? What inspires me? The word inspire means to breathe in, right? It means like to take in, literally, in the ancient ways, it was to take in spirit. Inspired. Something holy enters us. It's the thing that makes us get up off our seat and do something. Sometimes it's literally hunger. We could say that we don't want to do much work, but if we don't do much work and we don't make food, we don't eat, our hunger will inspire us to get up and have a meal. Sometimes maybe there's a piece of music. I know several pieces of music I love, but right away I'm thinking Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, especially the chorus part, the Ode to Joy. I hear that and I say, I want to do something now. It's made me want, let's do something to make my life feel a little bit more like Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. Like it would be my background music. Right? You might even try, get up in the morning and imagine some piece of music. Imagine, Ode to Joy. I can't sing. But if you know it, just imagine it's playing behind you as you march off to your meditation space, and crowds are cheering, and you can wave a little. And by the way, I don't know anybody who says you have to be always like serious. Master Shivananda would say he doesn't want to see any castor oil faces around him. So we don't want to be a castor oil face. Try to find something that uplifts you, that inspires you. I think maybe underused as a source of inspiration are biographies of great yogis, sages, saints of all traditions. Read what they did, what they experienced. You have to start seeing, on one level, start seeing all these great spiritual beings, male and female, as your peeps. These are your peeps. You're on the same path as they are or were, depending if they're still physically with us. They started the same way. They sat and nothing happened. They sat and their mind wandered, and they learned some things, and they sat and the mind still wandered. Little by little, they grew. They were human beings just like you. I would suggest affirming that you have a foot on the same path as Buddha and Lao Tzu, St. Francis, any of the greats that you could think of. Your foot is on the same path. At least your foot is on there, probably more. You're there. You've made it to that point. This is where you want to make sure that you could follow through. So find biographies. Again, great piece of music is an incredible inspiration. By the way, the Beethoven's Ninth, there were studies done with that piece of music. And in terms of the way it's been used universally since it's been composed, it's clearly the most powerful piece of music ever written. it's been used like politically in all kinds of ways to inspire people. It's a very powerful piece of music. You don't have to do that. You could, if there's a rap thing you like, that's fine too. Whatever gets you to your meditation cushion, whatever gets you there is fine. At least get you there in good shape. So I think regularity, it's not just good for the colon. You need it for your growth. It doesn't happen without it. Your growth is sporadic. There's a great scholarly writer, Karen Armstrong. Has any of you ever heard of her? Yeah, she's really worth knowing. She's written a number of really phenomenal books that would be very useful for yogis. They're little academic, but not that much. One of the things she was talking about was a knack. Just what great spiritual beings found is a knack. Do you all understand what a knack is? Like, it's something you can't. Here's the story. Years ago, I would drive by because I was working. I was the what do they call it? Dean of academics at an acupuncture school. And so I always went the same way. And on the way there was this wonderful Italian bakery. And I would stop and get lunch there. I'd get focaccia. And I got to know, after a while, I got to know the owner, Massimo. Massimo was a little fellow. And his breads and things were just incredible. And at one point, he started making pizza. And I thought, well, there you go. That's probably the world's greatest food. It's one of the few foods that's round like a yantra. So it's it's almost like a holy object. But I had as a hobby making pizza for a while, years ago. And I said, hey, Massimo, can I buy some dough from you, raw dough, so I can make my pizza at home? He says, nah, you could do it, but you won't be able to use it. I said, no, I have some experience. He said, you won't be able to use it. And he took me back into the kitchen. He said, here's a bowl of dough. Make it into a pie crust. It was like being caught in a spider web. It was all over my hands. He's laughing at me, and it's like, I'm making a mess. And I said, come on, Massimo. And he takes it and goes, zzz, and it's done. I said, how did you do that? He said, 12 years in Italy. I just watched the master baker. I can't teach it. You have to have the knack. There's something really subtle. And everything you try to say, in a normal way of describing things, just doesn't convey it. You just have to watch a master do it. That's what a knack is. Meditation is a knack. You get a knack by inspiration, by regularity, by persistent, quiet, daily, persistent. So find a way to pump up your practice.
Does that mean, Jaganath, that maybe we should watch you meditate for 12 years?
Yeah. You can just get a picture of me. Because if you catch me at the right moment, it'll be good. But by the way, and there are some sects in Buddhism where they recommend having an image of the Buddha in meditation and say to look at that and imagine what it feels like. Because usually the eyes are partially open and there's a gentle smile. There's a feeling of peace that's kind of engineered into that image. And they say, when you sit to meditate, look at that image first, and then imagine you being in that same image. It's a way to develop a knack. There's a knack to stilling the mind. And by the way, one of the most important things to keep in mind, if nothing else, this may be, I think, worth your while. Never force your mind. Never force your mind in meditation. The mind just rebels. And don't yell at it. don't be yelling at your mind for like being so lazy or so scattered. You know, if you're meditating on Om Shanti, it isn't easy to get to the Shanti without the mind wandering. It goes that fast. Right? You might just get the O, you may not even get to the M. And it won't be like you start with O and then you think about an appointment you have. It'll be like the older days with cameras, that I could take a picture of something, but if my hands shake, it's blurry. Right? Now I think they have a lot of auto correction. So if you're a little bit like your phones, the camera on your phones have that quality. It's like an auto correction, so it doesn't come out blurry. But in the older days, when you still had rolls of film, and if you were old enough to remember rolls of film and going to a place to get it developed, if you weren't still, it would be blurry. The mind doesn't always go like from O to M, doesn't go to like an errand you have to do. You get from O to M, but in between there was a shaking. You didn't even notice it. You had to even develop a knack for noticing that little shaking movement. So even before you get to Shanti, you could get lost. But if you're sitting there in Om Shanti and you get the O out and you're focused on it, you have made a gigantic step in meditation. If you just get the O and know you got it, I'm not exaggerating. If you can just get the O and you know it, you've done something that very few people can do. Really and truly. That's the nature of meditation. And with a little practice, you can get from the O to the M that way. And then to the Shan and the T. If you can get a full Om Shanti out, you're already in pretty deep meditation, if you're really focused. So avoid the trap of thinking, well, I have to force the mind somehow, threaten it, force it some way to be focused. That just brings more tension. And your mind, this is a little schizophrenic sounding. It might be actually schizophrenic. Your mind will respond by avoiding you. Your own mind wants to avoid you because all you do is criticize it. So, you know, we start good and we sit nice and we maybe light a candle or some incense or whatever, you know, moves us to do. But then we just start criticizing the mind and we think that was a waste of time. I was sitting here for a half hour. I did all the things I'm supposed to do. And all I was thinking about was what I had to do today. That was a waste of time. That kind of thinking sabotages meditation. There's nothing in meditation that happens that's a mistake. There's nothing that happens that's pathological. Your mind, all of us have seen like soda bottles, right? Bottles that soda comes in or sparkling water before the cap is removed. If I had a bottle like that and I said, are there bubbles in here or not? It's a tricky question because you have some knowledge of what it is inside. But if I say, are there bubbles in here? It wouldn't be wrong to say, no, there's no bubbles because I don't see, there are no bubbles. But as I loosen the cap, bubbles start coming up. Meditation is loosening your cap. Things start coming up. Just like cleaning a room that hasn't been cleaned in a long time. When you start to clean it, in the midst of cleaning, it's dirtier than it was before. It seems dirtier. So your mind is just like that bottle of soda. And the meditation technique is like loosening the cap. And what do? You wait. If you want it to be flat, you wait. But never force the mind. never criticize the mind in a heavy way. You can point the things out to the mind, say, well, you know, mind was a half-hour meditation, but you seem to be really fixated on the movie you saw last night. Right? Is that really what you want to do with this time? You have to talk to your mind like that. It's really useful. Why did you come up? What was it about the movie last night that you had to keep coming into my meditation? I just want to know. I'm not upset with you, mind, but what is it that you wanted? When you get the answer, you know, you have something really valuable, some bit of knowledge about who you are and how you operate. So I'm going to tell you, I'm finding out, I just found out from some people I've told this same story to. It seems like it's spreading as one of the best ways to learn meditation. This is a true story that ends with a little picture I'll get when it comes time. It's a story about me and one of my cats. I guess now this would be 11 years ago. My wife and I wanted to adopt pets. So we went around to the different shelters and different places where they had all these kittens. And there was one place we went to that had a big cage. They inhabited a pet shop. And it was beautiful. I can't remember his name. A beautiful kitten, just gorgeous. And a few others that are playful and they're coming up, and you know, one even licked my finger. It's so wonderful. And my wife said, well, any of those interest you? I said, no, it doesn't really. And then in the corner, there was like a little shelf, so it was like more than one level. And underneath was a little kitten. And this is a true story. All I saw was the one paw come out and go like this. And I said, that's the one. And my wife said, do you want to see it? This is true. And I said, no, that's the one. Said, but don't you want to see it? I said, no, that's the one. She said, you sure? I said, yeah. Well, the cat comes out, and it's this little ball of Brillo, bloated abdomen, blood coming out of the rectum. You could see fleas on it, and its eyes had this white, mucusy stuff coming out, and it seemed to have a little trouble breathing. And she said, you sure? Said, yeah. And she took me aside and said, he might not live through the night. I said, well, then at least we'll be with him. We'll give him a good send-off. And we took him home, really thinking there's a good chance he wouldn't survive the night. Well, he did. He survived the night. And the next day, I was working here where I am now in the office, doing some things on a computer. And there was a little cardboard box, and he was in the cardboard box. And I would look over, and then I would look over. And at one point I said, I had to pick him up. So I picked him up, and he only fit pretty much in the palm of my hand. He was a little guy. And he exhibited what I thought was a really strange behavior. You know how cats do when they wash, they do. Well, he was doing that, but he was doing it in a way that was clearly frantic. It was like he wanted to rub his face off. It was just like, man, he was really, and I said, that's a maneuver they make to comfort themselves as well as clean. That's the way they comfort themselves. So I said, he's living in fear. I found out later from the people we adopted from that he was the only one alive in a litter. They found him in an abandoned car in the summer. His mother dead, and 5 brothers, I think it was 5 brothers, or maybe he was the 5th. So it was 4 brothers and sisters, all dead, and he was the only one that survived. So I'm holding him, and he's comforting himself frantically. Right? And I thought, well, I'm not a cat whisperer. I'm not sure. But I said, the best thing I could do is just hold him and watch. And I held it. And it was a good 15 minutes. And then he curled up and fell asleep. And then I had to hold him for about an hour. So I'm typing with one hand, computer with one hand. I couldn't. Right? And I thought, this is meditation. I don't have to do anything. I just watch. That's your job as a meditator. Just watch. No forcing. No drama. I did feel a great compassion and affection and a responsibility. That's how you treat your mind. We gave him the name Ramesh, which means kind of the delight of the mind. Although we ended up just calling him Meshi. And he is, with pretty much without a doubt, one of the most happy beings on the planet. He could just sit and purr for hours. He's just always happy. And I'm giving that to you because it seems, I just talked to someone yesterday who was saying, yeah, I've been using it in classes and people are telling this story and they're finding it really useful. Think of that. And by the way, well, I'll do two things. I'm just going to slide over. Oh. This was, let's see if I can get it. That's him when he was a couple of days older then, but that's him. That's Meshi. Right? Who's displayed some behavior that I would consider like among cats, like he's Einstein. But that's another story. Watching him how to figure out how to open drawers and things is just an amazing thing. So,
Hariom Shri Guruji, we had one question come in.
yes, ma'am.
Yes. Okay, it says, if a meditator falls asleep while meditating, would you say that that's okay because they needed rest, or would you say they've meditated incorrectly?
It could be actually either or both at the same time. If you imagine meditation is like walking on a path, you could be doing really good, really good, really good, and then you fall asleep. It doesn't negate the really good that happened before, right? I wouldn't want to make that a habit. It could become habitual. Then you have to see what might be leading to the sleep. Sometimes a room that's too warm, or if you have food in the belly, generally, depending on the state of your health and what you eat, food stays in the stomach for about 2 hours before it goes to the small intestine and large intestine. So you don't usually want to meditate close to eating, because if you've ever seen, there are films of the stomach digesting. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's actually quite stunning how much activity. It kind of twists and grabs and twists and grabs. It's churning the food. So that means a lot of blood flow gets concentrated in the belly for the stomach so it can do its work. If it's taking that much blood, it isn't much blood left for up here. And that's why some of you may have experienced, I remember experiencing this when I was first starting meditation, that something's got to give. If you're meditating more deeply while you're digesting, if it's in your stomach, you could get really nauseous. That happened to me, because the meditation was deep enough that it stalled the digestion, and then the stomach was saying, well, if you're going to do that, we got to get rid of all this stuff. If you want to stop it, it's up to you. We're just going to have to vomit it out. And I decided just to stop meditating. So, make sure that you're on at least a light stomach. If you have to have something, just maybe something liquid. If you need it in the morning or something to get up, to wake up, that could make you sleepy. Again, a room too warm can make you sleepy. Obviously, if you didn't sleep well, can make you sleepy. It's really, I think, a good idea to do some good pranayama, the breathing practices. both to generate more prana, more energy, and then to harmonize it. It's not enough to just have more prana. It has to be rhythmic. Right? There's a rhythm that it's following, a subtle rhythm. So that's why you need both, like the bellows breath, that kind of thing, and then the alternate nostril breathing, something very rhythmic and steady. It's also helpful, but that sometimes helps you wake up. If it's early morning, then you could, before sitting to meditate, you could do even jumping jacks or something, a little vigorous something to wake up. I always liked the coldest water I could find, splash on my face and the back of my neck. And I dry off my face, but not the back of the neck. I just go with the wet neck and let it keep cooling me a little bit. But be careful, you can get in a habit of meditating. I mean, when you meditate with sleeping, but sometimes, I know maybe Ramananda's had a similar experience as I'm about to say. I've been in situations like a big group meditation, and we're all meditating, and the person next to me was snoring. During most of the meditation, they're snoring. And the same person, as we were leaving, said, I had such a great meditation. I didn't know anything. I didn't have the heart to say, oh my goodness, you were asleep. That was a Yogaville meditation experience that I had years ago. I mean, sometimes you don't know if a person's sleeping, but she was snoring. My habit was to sit all the way in the back of the room. I liked sitting in the back because I would open the window a little bit if it was near a window. So I wanted to be near a window. It wouldn't make anybody else feel chilled. But she was back there too. Anyway, maybe it was a kind of meditation. I don't know. Kind of a clogged nasal thing. I don't know. Yeah, but if you really have a deep problem with sleep, there's two things you could do. This is like when you're getting to like emergency room thing. One is meditate standing up. It's not the best. You can't really meditate deeply, but it's better than doing nothing, and it's better than sleeping. Stand up. If you have a mantra, you're watching your breath or whatever it is, just do it standing up. If that doesn't work, and you have like a little private space for your meditation, you can go there with a blanket and pillow, lie down and sleep there. If meditation is putting your mind in one spot, at least if you can't do that, you put your body in one spot. You do that for a few times, your own higher consciousness will urge you to meditate. You can't keep doing that and get away with it. Your mind won't let you. It'll just say, come on. You're getting up in the morning with a blanket and a pillow to sleep in front of your meditation altar. Why don't you just sit up for a little while? If you're sleepy, then you can lie down again. It's like the inner, you have an inner teacher. It's always trying to come forth and guide. And sometimes things that are dramatic like that will help bring it out. And don't be a coffee drinker. Too much caffeine, then you get a rebound effect. So just kind of watch things like that. Sugar also depletes your energy. So, and you get a boost from sugar, but then you get a little crash too. So that is a real problem. But if you doze off once in a while, just for a minute or two, it doesn't negate your meditation. It doesn't negate it. Everything you did before and what comes after. And then one more thing that I think of it as the meditation failsafe. It's really important, really beneficial to end your meditation sessions thinking of the benefits of others, to relieve the suffering of others. If everything else goes wrong and you do that, you've redeemed your meditation practice for the day. If you sit there and say, may the entire universe be filled with peace and joy, love and light, and you really pay attention and you do it from the heart, you've done something that 99.9% of the people don't do. It's an elevated, beautiful practice if you do that. So if that's the salvage, nothing else works. You do that. But again, regularity and even regular. If you want to get like really extreme, your alarm goes up, you wake up in the morning, you sit up in bed, say your mantra or watch the breath, whatever your technique is. If it's your mantra, say your mantra once. At least you've done it. You got something. You have to have a platform to build on. So you have to find ways to like keep it moving, keep it growing. Well, I didn't meditate today. Well, before I go to bed, I'll just sit for a minute. It's something. It's still building a platform. It may not be perfect, but it got you moving. You're on the path. It really works. You just don't give up. Don't have that mind of giving up. So now we're halfway through. It's probably a nice idea. We want to take a 5-minute break, get up, stretch, go into deep meditation for 5 minutes. We'll see who has a halo when we come back. If you have a halo. Okay, so I have it. I don't know. I have to. What time is it there? Here it's 3 o'clock. So
12 o'clock here.
well, okay, 12:05. We'll meet back here. So get up and stretch, get something to drink, whatever you need to do. I'll see you in 5. Okay, we start gathering again.
Hari Om Shri Guruji. I think we had another question come in. So once everyone's here, if you would like to address that.
Sure.
So the question was, would you like me to say it now, or should we wait till everyone is able to be here?
It looks like almost, well, on this page, everybody's here. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay,
I think
great.
we can do the question.
Great. Okay, so this question is about contemplation, and it says, what is contemplation, and how can we use contemplation to help us become more genuine in our lives? I'm thinking we meditate at certain prescribed times, but what about outside of those times? How do we contemplate, and what are some wholesome subjects to do that on?
It's a big question. Contemplation, right, the roots of the words, con and temple, right, contemplate, means to be in the temple, go in the temple. So, contemplation is it could have like some specific meanings, but my understanding, mostly contemplation means any inward directed attention that you give, because it's the word itself is implying something inner that's happening. It's not outwardly directed. So, for example, this is what the path looks like in a way, contemplation and meditation. Subject, verb, object, right? Subject, verb, object. I throw ball. I is a subject. Throw is an action. And ball is what I'm doing. I sit, meditate. Same thing. I sit, meditate. There's I, there's the action meditation, and in the sit, I'm trying sitting, and then the object meditation. The point we're doing in meditation is to realize that the object and the action constantly change, but the subject is always the same. It's always I. I am listening to this talk. Right? I went for dinner. I fell asleep. I have a headache. So what we're doing is we're making a distinction. Contemplation means the center is the subject, I. So in everything we do, we're paying attention to the I as being the anchor. We do it naturally in a very, fluid way. I stub my toe. We don't think about that as contemplation. But if you stub your toe and you are not only aware of the pain in your toe, but your own reaction to it, that inner experience, then it becomes a contemplative act. Opening a door is nothing, but you turn it to yoga when you pay attention to how you open the door. It reminds me, apparently this is a true story. I don't remember any of the names, but it's a true story. And it was a group of rabbinical students. This was hundreds of years ago. And they had a particular master that they studied with, a Rebbe that they studied with. And they just adored him, thought he was the best. And they didn't see him that often. He didn't live with them. He lived in a village a little further away. So they didn't see him that often. And one day, one of the rabbinical students was summoned by their master to go, and the other students were so excited. He says, what are you going to ask him? What secrets can you get him to talk about? Because that's what we all want. We want to know the secret. And when you get into spirituality, it kind of blends with their feeling of magic. Like, are we looking for a teacher or a magician? Is a good question to ask yourself sometimes. But anyway, so they were very excited. What are you going to say? What have you thought about it? What pearls are you going to bring back from the master? And he was like, I'm just going. He asked me to come. I'm coming to be with him. And so he was gone for a couple of weeks. He came back. And again, all the students surrounded him. He said, what did he say? What pearls did he give? He said, what can you tell us? He said, well, I didn't really focus on that. But it was the most rewarding experience. He said, why? I said, I watched him tie his shoes. That's yoga. He learned more because he was a ripe student, just watching the contemplative way his master tied his own shoes. It wasn't just, oh, I'm talking to my friend and tying my shoe, which we could all probably do. When he tied his shoes, he was tying his shoes. When he was walking, he was walking. When he was eating, he was eating. That's contemplation. So you put the I in the center and everything revolves around it, but you don't lose sight of the I, the focus. I hope that makes sense. That's what makes it contemplative. Being really good at tying your shoe is not contemplation. It isn't a matter of how well you tie your knot. It's a matter of your focus. Are you with what you're doing? We've all experienced it. If you drive a car, you've probably driven to places that you go frequently, and your mind it could be anywhere, but you get there anyhow. There's a part of the mind that wouldn't be contemplative. I'm not saying it's like evil or anything, but it's not contemplative. I got from point A to point B without even realizing I was practically realizing I was driving. Contemplative would be, I want to focus on what I'm doing. I want to be fully present to. I want to be a witness of my own life. I want to be able to see my life, to feel my life. One of the most powerful meditation techniques is just to watch your breathing. Just watch. That's contemplation. You're breathing anyway, so just watch. What is it like? How do you eat a bowl of ice cream? Are you chugging it down and freezing your mouth and suppressing your digestive system by gobbling up as fast as possible? Or are you with each spoonful carefully, extracting the joy of each one? How do you comb your hair? Are you with yourself, or are you kind of displaced in time? I'm here and in another time slot at the same moment. Do you know what I mean? Doesn't it feel that way sometimes? I'm sitting here in the office, but my mind is somewhere. We even say that my mind is elsewhere. So you're inhabiting two time slots. Contemplation means you're just one. Where you are, what you're doing, that's what you're doing. You're linked to that. You're yoga to that. You're linked to it. So that's my understanding anyway of contemplation. Be, again, like I said earlier, be with yourself. So I hope that usable answer for you. For you, I know you have a bunch of TTs, so I want to go a little bit, I don't want to say advanced, but a little bit outside what we usually do. I would recommend, let me see if I got it all down here. Yeah. One of the best sources of meditation, once you've been introduced to it, is in the Yoga Sutras. So I recommend that you study Sutras 1 through 10 in Book 3. 1 through 10 in Book 3. It's it might be the best stuff in the Sutras about meditation. A lot of times we run out of gas after Book 1 and 2 because there's so much wonderful things in there. And by the time we get to 3, oh, it's all these supernormal powers. I'm not that interested. But that's okay. There's stuff. Book 3, by the way, is like a sandwich. This is a quickie. It's like a sandwich. The very beginning and the very end have like stunningly powerful teachings on meditation. And in the middle, it has all these powers. You could have the 2 slices of bread if you want to deal with the powers. You still get something really valuable. So here I would say sutras 1 through 10. And it will help you very much understand Sutra 2 in Book 1, Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. This is where it connects. Patanjali gives you Nirodha, but he doesn't really say a lot about it. Here he does. Here he does. So I think I'm going to read a couple of them, and then we could talk about them a little bit. So Sutra 1, Book 3. Sutra 1 and 2 is going to have a surprise for you. But anyway, Sutra 1 is the practice. What's happening, these 2 sutras, I'm going to divide it this way. Sutra 1 and Sutra 2 in Book 3 are about concentration and meditation. Right? You know, concentration means the mind is fixed, but only for a short time. It's focused for a short time. It wanders, then you refocus. That's concentration. Meditation, dhyana, means that length of the focus is longer. There's no numbers that go with it, how long it is. But basically, if it's a little bit focused and wanders some, concentration. If it wanders less, longer focus, it's meditation. So these 2 sutras, I'm going to read these 2. They're short. The practice of nurturing and holding a flow of attention toward one chosen object, place, or idea is dharana, concentration. When the mind achieves an effortless flow of attention toward that one object, this is dhyana, meditation. Okay, I'll read it again. The practice of nurturing and holding a flow of attention toward one chosen object, place, or idea is dharana, concentration. When the mind achieves an effortless flow of attention toward that one object, that is dhyana, meditation. Okay, one thing that you might have noticed is the phrase flow of attention. When you read these sutras, you'll find the reason why I was saying before not to force the mind. Patanjali defines, remember Nirodha as stillness? He doesn't define stillness as static. He defines it as flow. The place where it becomes still is in samadhi, the higher samadhi. But for our basic practice, it's even more than basic practice. If you can get dhyana, you're doing pretty good, right? So here, it's a flow of attention. You're not forcing the mind, you're guiding the mind. You're inspiring the mind, right? Enticing the mind. And where does that come from? Because you won't see that in a lot of translations. It comes from like digging into the Sanskrit roots. This is where you might find it interesting. One of the meanings of the root of dharana, concentration, is 2 female breasts, which you might find odd in a book on yoga. And you're talking about focusing the mind. I mean, I guess you could conjure up something, anyway. 2 female breaths, concentration. It comes from da. The same root with a variation for meditation. One of the, this is a literal translation of the root. It means conceived in a womb. So you have this kind of stage 1 level, 2 female breaths. Then you have a deeper level, conceived in a womb. What's going on? When you think 2 female breaths and you see some of the other meanings of these same words, you get nurturing. 2 female breaths means that's the baby. So remember the story of Meshi. when I held him, that was nurturing. So the two female breasts is symbolic of this nurturing and giving. It's Patanjali is teaching you something phenomenal about meditation, the tenderness and the love and the nurturing that we should be having toward our own mind. And then it goes deeper, right? Baby's out at the breast. Then in meditation, dhyana, it's in the womb, where it's being protected and cared for and fed. So this idea of meditation is like forcing the mind. It's just opposite to what Patanjali is teaching. So important to, I think, to contemplate the meaning of those two words and the idea of female breast and womb and nurturing. Oh, by the way, a lot of in the sutras, in the Sanskrit, a lot of it is feminine. It doesn't come across because the people who translated didn't translate it as feminine, they translated it as masculine a lot of times. But this imagery is clearly about this powerful, feminine, nurturing energy, a transformative energy that happens and should happen in meditation. Okay, so I'm going to not go through every single sutra, but here's one that really is important. It's centering around the same teaching of how we treat the mind. And this to me is a sutra that is deep in explanation and also for me very deep in inspiration. So it's a little longer. If you just bear with it, I think it might be worthwhile. This is Sutra 33 now, 333. So you're meditating. It's assuming at this point you're meditating. So then this follows. By continuing in this manner, meditating, the flow of attention, again, the word flow comes in. The flow of attention becomes prolonged until samadhi, a state of mental integration and absorption, certainly arises. What I find inspirational is in the Sanskrit, Patanjali says, certainly. He's letting us know this isn't just like nice thoughts. This is going to happen to you. This is going to happen to you. The flow of attention becomes prolonged until a state of mental integration and absorption. You have spiritual experiences not glommed onto you like butter on toast. It becomes integrated into your life. When we started Yoga Life Society, the idea was Yoga Life, not Yoga Practice Society. It was to integrate everything into your life, not to have a separation between this is my yoga life and this is my other life. That it all becomes a yoga life, all dedicated to growth and service. So it says, in this state, it's as if the mind gives up its own form so that the essence of the object alone shines forth. When you get into samadhi, samadhi means to be samadhi. The sam means well, like well absorbed. Samadhi means to be well absorbed. I translated it as integrated. You integrate these insights, these intuitive insights into who you are and in your life. So it's not something you do anymore, it's something you are. Yoga is a journey from doing to being. Ultimately, we want to experience a state of pure beingness. That's the divine in us, pure essence, reality, the highest truth, right? So we have this then, the three stages: concentration, meditation, samadhi, this absorption. But this could still seem pretty formidable task. So Patanjali says something in Sutra 3.9. This is one of my favorite sutras, Sutra 3.9. It's about Nirodha. It says, this is how Nirodha develops. I'll stop there for a moment. You didn't say that in Sutra 2, Book 1, Yoga Chitta Vritti, just as yoga is Nirodha. Here he's saying, this is how it develops. It doesn't happen until book 3. Right? So there's a leap there. We're not sure. By the way, this is not likely how this was taught in 4 books. They didn't have any books. It was all oral. Somebody organized it in a certain way. It could have been all different. Anyway, this is one of my favorite sutras. This is how Nirodha develops until it permeates the mind. Nirodha permeating the mind, infused into the mind. This idea of steadiness, of intuitive insight growing. You want Nirodha, remember Om Shanti, the O, the M, and then the Shanti, if you can get it all together? You want it to develop until the sound of the mantra, using that as an example, that Om Shanti, just fills your being. When you say Om Shanti, that's all that's happening in your mind. There's nothing else. There's nothing on the periphery. There's nothing. It's just there. This is how Nirodha develops. This is how Nirodha develops until it permeates the mind. Those who know the sutras know that practice and non-attachment, it's mentioned as how you control the vrittis. It is practice and non-attachment generate subconscious impressions of Nirodha. Pause. You find if you go deeper into the sutras, Patanjali pays a lot of attention to the subconscious impressions, because that's what's making you do things and making you then say afterward, like, why do I always do that? How do I always get into that? You know that we've all said it about something. I can't stay away from donuts. I don't know why. I don't even like them. I can't stay. I see a donut shop. I got to get it. Where does that come from? Right? And I don't know why this person gets on my last nerve. Why is that happening? Right. Don't you have that thing where you don't know why you're acting a certain way, believing a certain way? So Patanjali's saying, it's okay to deal with, like, I have to go to the store, and that's my sojourn, my excursion in meditation, my mental excursion. He's saying that's fine, but what we really got to start paying attention to is what's going on beneath the conscious mind. That's where this sutra comes in. He said, again, practice and non-attachment, the basic things you learned. Practice and non-attachment generate subconscious impressions of Nirodha. You could say subconscious impressions of stillness, of clarity. You can substitute different words there. So the things you've been doing up to this point generate new subconscious impressions. You already have old ones that are causing sometimes grief. This is generating new subconscious impressions. As each moment of, this is my favorite part coming, as each moment of Nirodha appears, it subdues impressions that perpetuate the fluctuating externalized states of mind. I'll read that again because it's a little technical sounding, right? As each moment, pause there for a moment, your growth towards enlightenment happens moment to moment. The word in Sanskrit is kshana, K-S-H-A-N-A, kshana. Kshana is the shortest possible fragment of time, much less than a second, like the shortest possible length of time. So your growth, each and every one of us here, our growth towards defeating the ignorance that's causing us unhappiness, it grows in steps that are the tiniest possible. That's why you shouldn't feel discouraged. If you got the O in, you got a lot of kshanas in. There's like thousands of kshanas in that one O. And if you make it to M, that's like a home run. You get it to Shanti, this Grand Slam World Series over. It's like, and this is not just like, I don't think it's just me being like a cheerleader. This is real. This is how growth is had. As each moment of Nirodha appears, it subdues subconscious impressions that perpetuate fluctuating externalized states of mind. Vyutana is the externalized state of mind. the mind that's thinking about all these other things that a lot of times aren't irrelevant, at least at the moment. The word is vyutana. And it might be helpful, I'll read this whole sutra again, but think of, in a certain way, nirodha and vyutana are opposites. Vyutana wants to be thinking about all these other things at opportune and inopportune times, cravings, desires, all of that. That's vyutana, an externalized state of mind. Remember the octopus with 1,000 arms? Those 1,000 arms, that's vyutana, always reaching out, trying to find out what could bring happiness and what to avoid. That's the opposite of this inward state. One of the root meanings of the word nirodha is nirud. It means to go down to sprout up. The word nirodha means to go down to sprout up. So that's what we want. We want nirodha. Vyutana wants to keep us outside. It's the habitual thought patterns that we have. And here, this incredible gift, Patanjali does it in one word. Moment of nirodha. Now, if you're familiar with the sutras, it's clearly a teaching of a brilliant human being. This isn't, lightweight stuff. It's deep, powerful teachings. And he's saying to us clearly, a moment by moment experience is yoga. You build your bridge to enlightenment moment to moment. Yes, sometimes you might have like a little leap in your growth. That happens. But that happens usually after moment to moment comes. And then once you have the big one, then you have to moment to moment to integrate it more. So if you really contemplate that and think the next time you're going to meditate, all I need is a moment. Just, can I get the O in? Om Shanti. I could do that. I could do that. I could have a moment. The length of a time it takes me to say Om. I just have to have that, nothing else. If I can do that, wow. Then my next round, can I make it to like the M? Give it a shot. Oh, wow. Meditation, it doesn't have to be a drag. It should be a joy. It really should be a joy. If we stop being overly concerned with our definition of success. The other thing is, this practice is so subtle, we can't recognize our own growth. Years ago, we used to have an Integral Yoga Institute in New Brunswick, New Jersey, near Rutgers University. And this was back in the mid-70s era. There weren't that many yogis around. And Rutgers at that time had a big psychology department. So whenever they needed some yoga, they would call me up. So they would replicate studies. So I was like the guinea pig. I was sure I want to go see what it is. And what they were showing, and they replicated this year after year, that this is what I was asked to do. Go in, you have 10 minutes to teach these people how to meditate. And then that's followed by a 10-minute meditation. Then you could go home. That was it. So in one room, there was these people, and all of the people in that room had never meditated, never considered meditating, didn't know anything. Those days, it was like that. Most people didn't know from yoga or meditation much. So I would go in, I would teach them, they do a 10-minute meditation. And then there'd be a control group. And they would do things like show them movies, actual movies of car accidents. Not when they were happening, obviously, but afterwards. And sometimes it would be pretty gruesome. And everybody's hooked up to different machines that measure the oxygen concentration and brain waves and all as they're watching it. They wanted to compare the meditators, the non-meditators. One 10-minute meditation changed the operating system of the mind in a way that cannot be done any other way. One. A lighter one, which is easier to explain, is field dependent and field independent. Have any of you ever heard of that? It's a psychological thing. It's usually explained this way. It's a way that we assess things, field dependent or field independent. Field independent is considered more advantageous. And here's what it looks like in a way that I think all of you can relate to. You have a wall and you have a picture to hang. And you put in whatever it is, some hanger there, and you put it, and the first thing you do is you look at it to see if it's straight, right? Once you hang it up, you want to see that it's straight. If you're field dependent, if you're depending on the field, it means I only can tell if it's straight by comparing it to the ceiling line and the doorpost. I'm looking at other factors. I'm dependent on that to make a decision. Does that make sense to you? I need to have all this extra information. Field independent means you don't look at any of the other things. You don't need to. You can tell just by looking at it. Your perception of its levelness, is that a word? Level or levelty? Levelness is inwardly generated. There is no way practice can do that. No way. You either are or you're not field independent. And if a person takes the same test over and over again, if they're field dependent, they continue to stay field dependent, except when they meditate. It turns from field dependent to field independent in more than 80% of the cases. That's stunning. One 10-minute meditation after 10 minutes of instruction. Now, do you feel different? Not particularly, but it's a significant psychological change. So I'm saying this is like, you can't always judge your own growth. Because remember, Patanjali's talking about subconscious level. Subconscious, it means not reachable by the conscious mind right now, right? It has to be brought up. Or, yeah, basically subconscious mind, by the way, in yoga, it's not like a place. It's not like, I think the image, at least for me, would always be in the past, like there's this little place, it's higher up, and that's like the conscious mind. Then somehow lower, there's another room, and that's the subconscious. It's not exactly like that. It's more like a matter of magnification. The more you grow in yoga and meditation, the smaller the subconscious gets, because it's just a matter of what you can perceive. As you're able to perceive more subtle realities, things that were subconscious are no longer subconscious. Now they're conscious. Does that make sense to everyone? That's really valuable. I have a really good friend who's a phenomenal therapist. I've known him for over 40 years. Great yogi. He would come to all the Yoga Sutra classes that I taught for years. I've sent people to him for 40 years. And with like unfailingly wonderful results. He always said, sooner or later, I get my patients to do yoga. Whether they know it or not, that's what they're doing. He really believed in the power of yoga, especially meditation. And he achieved magnificent results with that. So,
Jaganath?
Read this sutra. Oh, good. Ramanath? Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
I really love this sutra that you've been talking about. I want to ask a question about Nirodha. Would you say that Nirodha represents a spectrum of experiences? One in which the mind is completely still, but also even the moments when the mind is partly still or a little quieter than usual, and that any of those experiences when the mind's a little quiet have their own impact, though it may be slight. Feeling a little bit of peace inside of oneself rather than the normal, lost in this tumultuous, scattered thinking, that each one of those little experiences also is a step in learning to experience ourselves as something more than just the mind and thoughts.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. The only thing I'd say was those little ones, they have significance. You know, there's a great thinker, Annie Dillard. Does anybody know Annie Dillard? You could read her. She does tremendous essays. Brilliant, brilliant woman. She talks about the value of a penny. That unless we know the value of a penny and appreciate it, we won't understand really the value of like $1 million, because $1 million is made up of a lot of pennies. Happiness is made up of a lot of pennies. You know what I mean? The peace within that we're looking for is made up of a lot of small experiences, as well as occasional like breakthroughs and profound experiences that come. So yeah, if you have a meditation that's like a little bit more placid than the one before, I would say it's profound. I mean, you may not feel it as profound because it's, you know, you have to go through a bunch of small ones that it has to add up. But anything that gets you closer to touching the inner you, the peace that's your true nature, the wisdom that's your true nature, the love, the light, whatever, the divine in you, anything that gets you close to that and even a little taste of it, a smidgen of it, it's really a treasure. And if anything, I think we tend to devalue it, those experiences. And you know, when you're in pain, here we're talking about the pain of being alive, nothing specific, but the pain of being alive. You really want to get out of it. That's the most important thing. So what we tend to do is we look for like more dramatic ways. That's what I was saying before, like a little bit joking. There's a certain point for a lot of yogis, yoga students, that they're looking more for magic. I mean, there is a kind of a magic in this process, but they're looking for like signs and wonders. And we're forgetting that the greatest, by far, the greatest wonder is that we have consciousness. Where did that come from? I mean, this is something, I keep saying it, I don't think it's hard to relate to it, but just hold it in your back pocket because it might come in handy one day. If you're just sitting there with your eyes closed, and I came up to you and said, "Is this you?" And you would say, "Of course it's me. I know." How do you know it was you? What were you looking at? Your eyes are closed. And nobody said, how do you know where did it come from? This idea that, oh, this is me, I know. I know it's me. My eyes are closed. It's not a mirror. A mirror, it makes sense. Oh yeah, I could see myself. Or, you know, you could see yourself maybe on Zoom. But when your eyes are closed and it's quiet, how do you know it's you? Who is it that's saying, yeah, that's me? If you solve that, you've got samadhi. You've got samadhi. That could be even a meditation. What am I seeing? I'm seeing something, not seeing necessarily visually, but I'm perceiving something. I'm aware of something that I'm calling me. Just try it sometime. Just sit for a few minutes. Yeah, I know this is me. I'm sure it's me. It was me yesterday and the day before. But who is it that's saying that? Who is it that's perceiving? And what is being perceived? That's for you, maybe a little more experienced meditators, but I think you could do it even as a new meditator, just for fun. How do I know? And when I find out how I know it's me, that reality is the same that's in each one of us. I don't have a separate I. I have a separate body, I have a separate mind, but not a separate higher I. You look at all these faces here, we're united on that level of consciousness. There's no difference on that level between you and the Buddha. Buddha even taught, unless you see everyone as a Buddha, then you're never going to get enlightened. So we have to find a way to fuel that optimism and that vision of reality that's given to us from people who, in a sense, crossed the finish line of enlightenment. We have to like, well, you know, they've been saying the same thing for thousands of years, and a lot of people have benefited. I'll tell you a little story that happened to me. It was exactly a story, but when I first got involved, I was really, you know, kind of a gung-ho, as most beginners are, really into it. But then I got caught because I was reading a lot of different books on yoga and the philosophy. And I said, wait, if this stuff is true, this is amazing, but how do I know it's true? How do I know there's a higher self? Where's that coming from? And I became obsessed for like several months. Like I kept thinking, and this is like a great ego lesson. Like, if I believe something, it has to be true, or else I'm not going to believe it, because truth is judged by me. Because that's what I'm really saying. I'm not saying in those words then, but that's what I'm saying. If I judge it as true, then it is true. Anyway, so I was going through that. I said, and I couldn't find a way to verify if it's true. And then one day it came to me. I said, well, what is the outcome of this way of living? And if you look at the great beings, sages, saints, prophets, you can get a clue. You find that these people who have expressed in some way their enlightenment, like a Buddha. What about a Buddha? What about a Jesus? What about Moses or Lao Tzu or Confucius? You have two things. One is they become happy, even under like difficult circumstances. And even happy is not a deep enough word. They see meaning and light and reason all around them. And they benefited others by their lives and their activities. And then I thought, if the result of all these practices is I become peaceful and happy, and my life can be benefit to others, I don't care if it's true or not. It doesn't make any difference, and it still doesn't make any difference to me. For every idea that we talked about, I could come up with another one. That's kind of almost opposite and great too. But there's a reality that's beyond the grasp of reason. Reason can take you so far and beautifully, but there's an end. And it's like, I picture it almost like I've made this long trip in this path, and now there's this giant balloon, and I have to puncture the balloon. Reason can't go there. Reason just can't. Reason, again, beautiful, brings us a lot of information, a lot of useful morals and ethics and practices and things that benefit our lives in a lot of ways. But if I want to transcend ignorance, I have to go not against reason. It's not against reason. It's not unreasonable. I have to go beyond reason. Reason and those experiences take you to the very end. And then something happens that's not unreasonable, not against nature, but there's no words for it. And I think we get that experience sometimes in intense relationships with others. Like if you really try to explain what love is, you're not really going to do a good job. I mean, that's even an easier level than we're talking about. How would you define love? Well, it's like caring, but more. Yeah, but that doesn't really do it. It's like they become the most important, and yeah, they could be, but you just try and try. You know, you just wait, you'll find out. When you fall in love, then you know what it is. It's something like that. So what's real here is our ability for self-transformation. Yoga is about transformation. there has to be change that happens. Pema Chodron talks about that as well. If you don't, there's going to be no change. You're not going to get anywhere. Something has to change. You'll find if you're on this path, maybe your priorities will shift a little. What becomes really important to you day to day in your life, the kind of things you do, the kind of people you're with, the kind of objectives that you have, they start to change. It may not be drastic, but it'll be significant. What's important to you? How are you going to spend your short time on this planet? What's really important? That's what yoga is there to help us address. And again, with reason and with our practices, we get really far and really beautiful. And then you have to take up that last step. In Chinese philosophy, when I was at acupuncture school, we learned about, like, you know, the yin-yang symbol, right? Yin-yang, the kind of interrelated opposites. That's not the highest reality. The highest reality they almost never talk about. The highest reality was called Wu. If you imagine, in a sense, it's kind of like the blackboard that you draw the yin-yang. The blackboard is Wu. It can't be really defined. And I always thought, when I heard that from one of our professors, I immediately thought of a roller coaster. And so when you get to the top, then people throw up their hands and go, woo! I thought that there's some great Chinese sage was meditating and then got enlightened and went, woo! And someone said, let's write that down, because the students want to write it down, you know. Our masters found the ultimate truth, and its name is Wu. But it's like, when it says woo, and I somehow think that might be the most accurate description of enlightenment there is. Just like woo, there's that moment where you can just throw off all the cares and things that weigh us down, and enter into a place where it's just filled with compassion and faith and love. That's what meditation is leading us towards. Let me just get just a couple of minutes, but I have one thing, one sutra and one thing. Yeah. We did that Sutra 3.9 just to cap it off. There's not much to say about it, but it's just nice to hear. We're working on moments of Nirodha. Then it says, when impressions, remember subconscious impressions, when impressions of Nirodha become strong and pervasive, right, it's permeating the mind more, a calm flow of Nirodha is attained. A calm flow. Again, in Patanjali's teaching, meditation is about flowing, not about stepping on the mind. It's going with a flow on a deep level. And then the last thing I'm going to do is actually a wonderful example of what balances a meditation life, a life of meditation. And it has to do, the story is with the Buddha. There's two versions. One is, it's interesting. In this story, there's two versions. One is a Hindu version of it. One is a non-Hindu version of the story. But the story is, Buddha, you know, he sat under the bo tree 40 days, 40 nights, and achieved nirvana, enlightenment. And the story goes, at that point, and this isn't exactly what he said, but it was like, hey, this is pretty, maybe it was his version of woo. Like, this is great. I don't feel now like I have to do anything. Everything is completed. I'm at total peace with everything. This incredible experience. They said, I think now I'm done. I'm just going to sit here and enjoy it, which is understandable. Like all that work, if you know a little bit of the story, how much effort he put in, and then he achieved it, and it's even better than he thought. He said, that's it. I've done it. There's no place else to go. In the Hindu story, which I find very charming, Lord Brahma comes from heaven. Brahma's the creator. Comes from heaven and says to the Buddha, please, Please, sir, what you've experienced, the world needs to know. Please consider going out and teaching. It'll save many lives. The Buddhist version doesn't have Brahma. The Buddhist version, Buddha himself comes to the conclusion, so, well, there really is something. Think of this. Nirvana, in a sense, isn't enough. Buddha himself said, no, I have to get out and serve. Meditation is balanced by selfless service to others. That's the meaning of these stories. Bringing the peace of meditation into the world as service. Doing things every day for the benefit of others, even if it's just, not even just, even saying a prayer, or having a visualization, or reaching out to a friend you haven't heard from in a long time. Little things like that. If it happened to the Buddha who achieved nirvana, he saw that there was something lacking even in nirvana. That's the power of that story that I think a Buddhist wouldn't miss. He achieved the highest and said, no, I got to do more. I got to bring it out. I'm in a body. As long as I'm in a body, this is what I should do. This should be a path of loving kindness. My tree, so about my tree, loving kindness. So that's where I think I can leave you. You have the practice, and we didn't spend a lot of time, but the power is there. Serve others. Live for the sake of others. Spend a little time every day for your own health and your peace, and share with everyone. That's the formula. Live for the sake of others. A little time every day for your health and peace, and share with everyone. So I see my time is up. Thank you so much for your kind attention. Go and meditate up a storm and save the world. We're all counting on you. Thank you. Peace be with you all. Shanti, shanti.
Thank you so much, Reverend Jaganath. Always a profound experience to spend time with you, and inspiring to hear your nuanced understanding of this profound practice. Thanks so much.
Coming from you, Ramananda, it's really beautiful. It means a lot. It really does. So, I think, Sita, you made a wiggle. What were you wiggling?
Yes, I was just going to say, I'm going to post in the chat. We have an email address you can email if there were any questions that didn't get answered during the program. And I'm going to put our the Yoga Life Society's website, because we offer many programs on Zoom. We offer satsang every week and puja every Sunday, and feel free to join any of our programs. You can check them out online. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we'd love to host you all. Okay.
Thank you, Sita. Good.
I hope to see you all somehow soon. Meet you on the higher level. Thank you all. Bless you all. Bless you all.
Let's do a closing chant. Those of you who are still here, following Reverend Jaganath's advice, we can chant the Loka Samasta mantra together 3 times. Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. May the entire universe be filled with peace and joy, love and light. May the light of truth dispel all ignorance. Victory to that light. Jai Sri Satguru Maharaj Ki Jai. Okay, thank you all for coming. Thank you for your help, Sita. You can stop the recording. Good.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.